WRFG Atlanta.
Good morning blues will brighten up your day as you put on your shoes. Yeah, yeah. You know it's got to be the way to wake up each and every day on WRFG in Atlanta. Good morning blues.
Good morning, Blues.
I said they called it Stormy Monday. I said that Tuesday is just as bad as what it is. I said they called it Stormy Monday. Tuesday just as bad as what it is now. Wednesday's full of sorrow. But I said the Thursday's also so sad. It's also sad as well.
Good old Jethro Tull there, covering Stormy Monday, because they were a blues band for the first two albums and a little bit on the third and fourth. But we're celebrating 50 years of Aqualung. Yes, what a huge amount of time to pass from a seminal album from a band that's still rolling to some degree. They quit touring as the original act just a few years ago. But the reason that I thought it was worth presenting this show today is because I've got the wonderful Mr. Ian Anderson to talk to. And this was recorded a few years ago while they had just put out a DVD of the Montreux Festival show, which was a particularly good recording and content. But it's the discussion that we had to do with blues in the UK and some of the acts of that time that makes it worth re-listening to, especially now, 50 years of Aqualung. Well, definitely living in the past. So that was Jethro Tull's love story from the first album, This Was, in 1968, which I really preferred. Before that, Living in the Past was actually from the 69 album Stand Up. Those two albums were the ones that I played a lot, both very bluesy, rocky, but let's face it, they were pretty different, hard to pin down. They were a strange psycho blues band, and the first lineup was Mick Abrams, Glenn Cornick, Clive Bunker, and Ian Anderson. So in June 68, just before the This Was album, they actually began a residency at the famed London's Marquee Club. This is where the Stones and the Who also launched their careers. Band advisors, I don't know who they were, they're not often talked about, failed to get Ian to give up the flute and let Mick do all the singing. It's like everybody had their pocket they were supposed to be in, but no, things never were normal for Jethro Tull. The album was recorded without any contract with any record label, just presuming, quite correctly, that a deal would come afterwards. They began their first US tour in January 69, right at that point getting guitarist Martin Barr, because Mick Abrams had decided, hey, if we're really not going in the blues direction now with the way that we're playing, I'd like to go do something that is, because that's why I joined. Anyway, the tour had really $0 impact, but it did create a cult following. The first thing they actually recorded was a piece I'm about to play you, which was on MGM. 1968, a Mick Abrams song, and they were labeled as Jethro Tull, T-O-E, not T-U-L. But these kind of things were not totally unusual at the time, and certainly gives you an idea of the sound.
Woke up this morning to look at things in their funny way. Why can't they be like they used to be only yesterday? Ooh, really bad, my sunshine day. I look at things that once were mine with such despair. Why do the things I say only fall on empty air? Back my sunshine day. My mind cries, bring back my sunshine day.
Sunshine Day on the MGM label, a Mick Abrams song by the band in 68 before the album. But it's Aqualung that is 50 years old, and that's where we need to go. So you're going to hear a couple of pieces, remixes of stuff, before we talk to Ian Anderson.
Shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser headlong to his death. Oh, it feels a piston scraping, steam breaking on his brow. Oh, Charlie stole the handle and the train didn't want to stop going, no, it just slowed down. smile down upon your son. Yeah, was busy with his money games, oh, his women and his guns. But Jesus saved me. Killing Lindy and North Green, and then he made his name in Hollywood. Oh, and just set the white man free. Ah, Jesus saved me. Saves, well, it better save himself from the gory, glory seekers who use his name in death. Oh, Jesus, save me. Saves, oh, well, it better save himself from the gory, glory seekers who use his name in death. Oh, hey. Oh, Jesus, save me. Yeah.
Parents, if you're looking for a youth sports program in a safe environment, registration is now open for the Say Yes to Sports after-school program. Yes offers virtual and in-person daily sports programs for the Atlanta Middle School youth. Programs include yoga, African dance, and basketball training. Yes also offers youth horseback riding, gardening, and cooking classes. For more information, the web address is yescsph.org. That's YESCSPH.org, or by phone 404-691-5187. This is another public service announcement from your station for progressive information, WRFG 89.3.
Jethro Tull there with Locomotive Breath and Hymn 43 from Aqualung. Stand Up was the 1969 album and was the first album project where Ian had total control over the music and lyrics. This is why Martyn Abrams moved on. And the result was a very eclectic album with lots of styles and instrumentation in the song. Still bluesy, but was obviously very much heading into a different direction. But it went to number one in the UK charts. And that was kind of a big deal. And it wasn't till May 71 Aqualung came out, which is really what we've been talking about and why we're doing this, because it's 50 years ago. And for a concept album to get to number 4 in the UK chart was a pretty high achievement. So there's your introduction to the world of Jethro Tull from all those years ago. So when you hear Ian Anderson talking from about 8:30 onwards, maybe it'll make more sense, but still pretty an amazing outfit. And this guy has a very high IQ. Why the hell he's talking to me, I have no idea. Meanwhile, we're going to move on for a little bit, just to dabble in a lot of new music, new blues, new things, new releases. And after Ian at about 9:30 for the last half hour of the show, we will continue with new sounds, new artists, and new pieces to give you quite a mix-up on today's Good Morning Blues Show.
one day sugar. When the blood runs cold in my veins, you won't be able to hurt me. My poor heart won't feel the pain. I cook and I clean for you, baby. And I try to be the best that I can. You know I cook and I clean, honey. And I try to be the best that I can. I know you think I'm your fool, 'cause I know you're with your other man.
but in the darkness I see light. I see the people in the shadows coming out and standing up for what is right. I woke up with my knees on the ground, tears in my eyes. I fell love all around the world. I had a dream last night that there was nothing but good vibes all around the world. Nobody hated, 'cause everybody was alright. I thought I saw
stuff began with Clarence Spady and a wonderful tribute to Lucky Peterson with a song called When My Blood Runs Cold. Brand new artist Quinn Sullivan I started playing last year, and his album is finally out, a track all around the world. And finally, Widespread Panic doing a live version of Tall Boy back in 2013. We will continue with the newbies after we have a session with Jethro Tull talking to Mr. Ian Anderson.
Oh, it's Dan Gillespie, and I'm talking to you from London, England. Ooh, yeah. Just listen to UK Bob. Oh, good morning blues on WRFG Atlanta 89.3 FM. Ooh, give me the blues, give me the blues, yeah. Ooh, give me the blues, yeah.
That old feeling is in my head.
Hello, Bob. This is Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull calling.
Good morning, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all, thanks.
Well, I'm very pleased that you're able to join us here on Good Morning Blues in WRFG Atlanta.
Wow, great.
Well, this is great. A true pleasure for me to be able to have a quick chat with you and to tell our audience what's going on in brief on some of the things that I'm conscious of, and maybe hopefully you can dig in some things that that we don't know about. I guess first thing on our headphones here the other week was the new product, which is the Montreux 2003.
Correct, yeah, that's right.
No.
And that's something I have yet to actually watch and listen to. In fact, you just reminded me that somebody sent me some copies of it just before I headed off to wherever it was I was last week on tour. But yeah, I must have a look at that. I haven't seen it since it was in just after it was recorded a couple of years ago.
Well, funnily enough, though, I got a note here for myself to track down the actual DVD. What I've got is the double CD audio.
All right.
And I will say, the first thing that stood out is what a wonderfully crisp production it was.
Well, that's actually just the live sound. It was straight to stereo from the front of house. It wasn't actually multi-track recorded or mixed down. It was just literally 100% live, and it is what it is. So same with the picture. You know, they mix it to HD TV as it's being filmed live, and that's it. Just 7 cameras, but mixed, and so you can't go back and redo anything. So it is what it is. But the folks have been doing the Montreux Jazz Festival for years. The production crew, they seem to have it in hand.
Well, certainly the DVD is big on the list, because I don't know how many other people listening kind of tune into this, but I always feel that you're that much more visual than most artists that we're going to listen to. So wouldn't it be great to put on a big home theatre and sit down and get the big experience?
That's right, and there's no bigger home theatre than that of Claude Nobbs, the promoter of the Montreux Jazz Festival, who in his chalet up in Glion above Lac Le Mans in Switzerland has something that would be about the size of the average movie screen in his living room in his chalet, and the seats for the audience to sit and watch it are actually first-class Swiss Air seats, and
which he duly paid for.
Well, I think they're probably first-class Swiss Air seats circa 1975 or something. They're no longer in service in that particular configuration, but they're quite comfy. And the last time I was there, in fact, was just over a week ago. I was in 2 weeks ago. I was in Montreux, and I've been sitting in one of those first-class Swiss Air seats, watching some recording from an earlier Montreux Jazz Festival. Was none other than Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones.
Uh-huh.
He was up there for lunch with Claude and some of the other folks from the Stones, and they were having a little sit down and afternoon vodka and tonic or whatever Keith Richards drinks a lot of. Anyway, he was in good shape. It was actually on my birthday, and curiously, it was Keith Richards' son's birthday on the same day. So.
A double excuse for vodka on his cornflakes. A double excuse
for another afternoon of too much vodka, yes.
Well, it's funny because Claude also maintains a home here.
In Atlanta?
Yes.
Mm. Well, Claude's always been quite close to some of the folks from the major record companies in the USA, and I think he's cruised around a lot of America. That's probably the wrong term to use in the case of Claude, but we know what we mean. And he's a great. Well, I think America's kind of his second home, where he always seems to head off for a few happy days of holiday after the hectic Montreux Jazz Festival every year.
Well, it's definitely a great place to escape to, and I'm led to believe that, hoping that nothing else changes your schedule, that you will actually be heading here on December the 7th.
That's right, yes, we have a concert on December the 7th, that's correct, at somewhere I can't remember the name of, but it's a little while off. I've got time to learn my geography. The Tabernacle, does that ring a bell?
Yes.
Yeah,
well, I was wondering how much you knew about the Tabernacle, because when I saw that, I was thrilled. This is a tremendous venue for an artist like you to put on a show.
Well, we played lots of different venues in Atlanta over the years, but I think that's the first time for this one, so we look forward to it. It's always a new experience playing a different venue, and as long as the plumbing works, then I'm usually fairly happy.
Well, let's say it's the complete opposite of a Chastain Park. This is a 1910 Baptist church, a venue with a very intimate feel and acoustically appropriate. And in my head, it's very good for the kind of detail that you embellish in your music. You know, so you've not played there before, and you don't know the history to it.
Well, it's something I guess I will now have to Google and find out all about it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I would think then, as a deist, joining the likes of Brando, Bonaparte, and Ben Franklin, do you think there may be some spirits that may be there to challenge that night? You know, maybe we can conference in Gary Brooker of Procol for notes on his Union Chapel DVD experience.
Wow. Well, a lot of the venues we play in different parts of the world have a very profound sense of their own history. And when you walk on the stage in such places as Ephesus, the Roman amphitheatre in Turkey, or when I was playing a couple of nights ago in Israel at Caesarea, the amphitheatre adjoining the palace that was built by King Herod, and that goes back just even longer than Jethro Tull. So these sort of places, they're very resonant with with gladiatorial pursuits other than simply rock music. And many of the fine theatres that we play, in fact, in America, lots of the great Art Deco and Art Nouveau period of theatre building, 1920s, 1930s. There's some great theatres that were built turn of the 20th century into that pre-war period, and they have a certain real resonance about them when you walk into them, and you think of all the people who played there and all the things, people who've probably literally died on stage. It's something you do kind of feel. You can sense that authority, that weight of history. The Fitzgerald Theatre in St. Paul, Minnesota, where what the hell's the name of that radio program that gets out of there? The Prairie Home Companion comes out of there. It's lots of places like that. They're very special to me.
Well, if you get a chance while you're here, having maybe before the experience at the Tabernacle or right after, depending on how much time you have, literally down the street, one such establishment that, like you're describing, called the Fox Theatre.
Oh yeah, played there a few times.
Oh, okay. Then have you ever had a chance to have the peak round the back and the little apartments upstairs and the hidden walls and staircases and stuff?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. Well, it's very like the sort of thing that you're talking about, and I often wonder, as a non-musician and somebody who's not in a position to perhaps get engrossed in the vibe of what's going on stage, I often think if there is an impact on what's gone before, and from mentioning Gary Brooker, one of the things that was odd when I was talking to him last year on the show, he had just put out that Union Chapel product, and I could almost hear this massive organ swirl, and it was I often wondered at the time whether there was any extra experience for him in that kind of thing, and it's tough to sometimes imagine what's being absorbed into the walls.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. I mean, you don't have to be into ghosties and spirits to sort of feel that in a theatre. It's, I'm not particularly sensitive about ancient country houses, but I guess theatres have something very special about them. It's such an outpouring of emotion, both from the performers and the audience alike. It does seem to somehow get into the woodwork and the stonework of a building. Yeah. It leaves its traces, as it were. But enough of such cosmic matters. We'll be talking about teepees and John Anderson of Yes next, or Donovan.
Oh no!
Smoking bananas, or whatever he was supposed to do. I don't know.
In this US portion of the tour, then, would we anticipate in Atlanta to get a mix of acoustic and electric, or is there a program in mind?
That's a very, very reasonable anticipation, because most of our concerts through the years have been a mixture of acoustic and electric, because it's hard to escape the acoustic stuff, since that's what I do. And as the sort of founding member of Jethro Tull, and after 39 years of doing it, there's inevitably the acoustic flute, the guitar, the mandolins, the bouzouki, those sort of things are part of what we do. And lots of songs that are perhaps thought of as epitomizing rock music do in fact have lots of acoustic passages within them. Things like My God and Aqualung, for example, and Thick as a Brick, and to this day, the acoustic music is still very much part of the part of what we do. But I think on the US tours this year, we will sort of divide things up into the more acoustic things in the first half of the show, and with a greater emphasis on the electric stuff in the second half of the show, which again is something we've done before, but it just seems to make for a good concert kind of a basis of sorting out the material into some kind of form. So
well, I like it that way myself, and I would think that due to the very diverse audience opportunity here, we have 4.5 million people in Atlanta from all walks of life, all ages. It's a very cosmopolitan place. I would imagine that you're going to get a huge capture in pleasing everybody. I personally like the blend simply to hear the change, and you also notice the different abilities in the musicians in the band.
Well, we try in that context to give different band members the opportunity to play in different ways, and not just to stick with the one kind of style. They get to play different instruments and perhaps show off a slightly different way of playing, and that's kind of something that, again, I think makes it interesting for us musicians too, that we have to, well, not for me, for them, they have to stretch out a little bit more than they would do on a concert like I will do in a couple of days' time in Romania, which is just an electric Jethro Tull concert, and with a few acoustic moments from me, but for the rest of the guys, they'll just play electric instruments all the way through, and so I think they enjoy doing more of the acoustic stuff in balance with the electric stuff.
January 29, 2021 marks the 15th anniversary of Earned Income Tax Credit EITC Awareness Day, a nationwide effort to increase awareness about the EITC and other refundable credits. The Internal Revenue Service and the United Way of Greater Atlanta are providing information on EITC and other refundable tax credits you may be eligible for at a virtual EITC Tax Day. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, Congresswoman Nakima Williams, United Way President Milton Little, and representatives from the IRS will discuss how you can be eligible to file a tax return even if you don't owe any tax to claim the EITC. More information is available on the events page at unitedwayatlanta.org. This is another public service announcement from your station for progressive information, WRFG 89.3.
Into my head when I think back to the beginning is you gave us a lot of blues orientated material, 68, 69, etc. Was it just a popular platform in order to be heard, which maybe now after 35 years of far more complex material no longer appeals, or is it possible that the gap is too wide to step back, it's too simple? I'm just wondering, are we likely to see something in a blues related cut possibly on some new production coming in the next 12 months?
In terms of new recordings, probably not, but in terms of what we play on stage, it's quite often the case that we will include one or two songs from our very first album, which was a more bluesy affair. I mean, sort of bluesy with kind of slight, I don't know, simple jazz leanings, but the music in 1967-68 that was, I suppose, part of the underground, particularly in the southern part of the UK, was I think a legacy of what the Rolling Stones had done in the earlier part of the 60s, and was brokered by such as Alexis Korner and later by John Mayall. Was a kind of white English middle class blues, which Peter Green and Eric Clapton probably took to a degree of refinement that was way beyond anything that came out of Black America at the time, but was taking the guitar stylings of people like B.B. King and even some of the acoustic players like Robert Johnson, and putting them into a kind of white middle class context that was something certainly could never have happened without those Black American urban and folk music blues folks of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But it kind of got this new lease of life in the UK mid-60s, and by the end of the 60s it was quite well established, and Jethro Tull came in on the end of that, since we were a kind of a jazzy blues band at heart rather than anything else, in the pre-Jethro Tull editions of my musical efforts, and it was a good jumping off point for what came later. But I was influenced by not just blues as a teenager, but by church music, by folk music, by jazz, and to a degree classical music. And by the time we made our second album in 1969, my listening tastes were quite broad and included Mediterranean music and Asian music and what is popularly lumped into the general term world music these days. But blues was a good starting point for learning your basic craft as a musician and learning about improvisation. And having been there, done that, it felt in 1969 the right time to move on. In fact, towards the end of 1968 it was the right time to move on, because I never really felt particularly qualified as a blues musician, and I didn't really feel very comfortable about such a degree of inevitable imitation of American and Black American artists, because I was neither American nor Black, and it felt to me a little odd to be doing that kind of music from the standpoint of being a white British person. So I thought rather better to be more eclectic and less obvious in my influences than just having one simple, overwhelming influence like blues. And I mean, to this day, I enjoy playing it to some extent, and I've been fortunate over the years to play with several blues and jazz musicians of various colours, and they all have an awful lot more authority, really, in that respect than I do as musicians in those genres. So I guess where I have it over them is because I perhaps do have a little bit more of an awareness of different kinds of ethnic folk music from different parts of the world.
Well, I'm always surprised at the caliber of our audience. Would you be surprised at the number of requests we get from people to hear things like, Someday the Sun Won't Shine or Move On Alone, even the BBC version of Stormy Monday Blues?
Well, I wouldn't be so surprised. I mean, we walk out on stage at the moment on the tours we're doing, and the first thing I play is Martyn Barr and I walk out alone, and we do Someday the Sun Won't Shine for You, which is it's a good way of starting the show from the early roots of Jethro Tull as an acoustic blues band, and that particular piece owes a great deal to Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, who, as a teenager, I was listening to. I certainly wasn't listening to the pop music from the UK at the time, and with all respect to dear old Cliff Richard and Marty Wilde and Billy Fury and those that, as a probably I was just into my teens when they appeared, I mean, it was all very well, but it was so imitative of the kind of post-Elvis thing that it didn't really move me a great deal. So British pop music wasn't my thing at all. I was always much more interested in blues and jazz and kind of acoustic music forms that just felt to me, they had a lot of energy, a lot of passion. They weren't pretty. They were fairly gutsy, and that appealed to me. They were powerful without being necessarily ear-splittingly loud. But I was never much of a one for the jangly guitars of either the Shadows or any of the sort of early rock instrumental groups. It was an okay noise, but just as hearing Peter Green playing at the Marquee Club back in the early days of Fleetwood Mac was a real treat. But I never really felt either competent as an electric guitarist myself, nor that I particularly was drawn to that kind of guitar-based music. It's just something that I guess is just a personal preference. But having said that, it's what surrounds me most of the time when I'm doing Jethro Tull concerts is loud electric guitars, and it's part of what we do. But it's certainly not the only part.
Well, it's funny that you make the comparison there, that you didn't feel like you wanted to mimic down that path of black American blues back to the caliber of some of the audience that we have here. It surprised me how well they are able to pick out the early British blues artists and don't consider them mimicry, because they feel that they add and embellish in a fashion that's very distinct. It's hard for me because I think I missed out. I think I was born probably 5 years too late. In, would have been 1968, when you did the Sunbury Jazz and Blues Festival, was the year that I joined Sunbury Grammar School. Mm-hmm. And I remember the posters and things, and I didn't know what I was looking at. I thought, who or what is Jethro Tull? And it was something that I didn't get. And it wasn't until living in the past that I suddenly made the connection beyond the generic pop music that I was perfectly happy listening to, getting absorbed by the small faces and all that kind of stuff. That it came to mean something in terms of music that I would enjoy listening to. So it's strange that I can only remember, I can only remember the school posters at the time. I don't remember anything about, where the concert was or the kind of music that was being played at the time. Maybe it was something to do with the pictures that were being used, but it definitely, from the beginning, Tull stood out as something unique, standalone to one side. I mean, was that a deliberate, attempt to visually change what people might think of, what they intended to listen to?
Well, music back then, I remember being at the Sunbury Jazz and Blues Festival and thinking it seemed almost like the end of an era in some ways, because it was the fading out of a time when particular promoters of that were allied to the management of the Marquee Club, and it was the end of an era of jazz and people like Chris Barber and Alexis Corner and so on, who'd been part of that spearheading British music, British American blues and jazz-based music from the 50s through the 60s. But it seemed in a way like a bit of an end of an era, because what was ushered in at that point was Deep Purple and Jethro Tull and 10 Years After and the beginning of something that was much more. It was a step on. It was a step on. It was an evolution from that early kind of fumbling that had been so much a part of the early Rolling Stones and so on, the Alexis Corner.
Walking it's an old day now. Spent a long time looking for hurricane to play. My luck should be so bad now to turn out this way. I had to leave today just when I thought I found you. Watching you day yesterday, but it's an old day now.
He was a very important guy in establishing. Without Alexis Corner and perhaps John Mayall afterwards, there probably wouldn't have been most of the stuff that we came to know at the end of the 60s into the 70s. You know, it was such an influential time. But it did 78, I think, mark the end of that rather more amateurish era of jazz and blues and the beginning of rock music as we came to know it. I mean, rock as opposed to rock and roll, which is Elvis and Bill Haley and stuff like that. But rock music as we know it, being particularly a UK sort of based phenomenon, I think that really did start in a firm way in 68. And obviously by 69 you had Led Zeppelin, who swept all before them, and we were fortunate enough to be a support act to Led Zeppelin on their first major arena tour in 1969. And showmanship and that kind of personality thing was a big part of those British bands, and obviously for an American audience, seeing the bare-chested peacock strutting Robert Plant was he looked like some strange ethereal Nordic god on the stage, and I mean he was it was a great visual representation, a great sort of stamp of a very visual personality onto the music. And bands that came along later, like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and so on, they also had that sense of kind of bigness about them. I mean, a bit too much bravado and pomp, perhaps, from all of us at that time. But that's what you kind of had to do if you were playing in big places, and these were before the days of huge video screens at the side of the stage. You were a little dot on the horizon, so you had to kind of dress up and be larger than life to get across to people.
Oh, I think that was, to me, as a punter, like again a non-musician, someone who's paid to be entertained. That to me is often a huge percentage of the evening's entertainment. What am I going to see? Not so much how they play and what their expressions are while they're playing, but what's the backdrop? What's the big picture? When you look at a Supertramp show or something like that at the time, it was staggering.
Yeah, well, it probably all was. I happily didn't have to sit through too much of it myself because I was always out working. But I didn't even see half the support groups that played with us or main bands that we were a support group to, because you tended to go on stage, do your thing, and then race off to do some promo at a radio station or whatever else you had to do in the day or evening. So there are lots of bands that I never really got to see, even though they were part of our show.
Well, the impact has carried through back to today, and current blues artists, and what we call contemporary modern artists. Supposedly the guitarist Joe Bonamassa was here about 6 months ago, and we got into the conversation of his influences, and he immediately went back to some of your stuff from that time. That he plays in probably the first few songs of his set today, so he will attest to the fact that it still impacts him, doing things like New Day yesterday or whatever. But so I still think that there is it's a great platform, even though it's still set back in time. People are still making the point of drawing on those experiences from them, maybe not changing it too much for fear of the threat of spoiling it. But I'm certainly looking forward anyway to seeing you guys play live at somewhere like the Tabernacle, where I think it's going to be quite a different experience.
WRFG Atlanta.
Good morning blues will brighten up your day as you put on your shoes. Yeah, yeah. each and every day on WRFG in Atlanta. Good morning, blues.
Good morning, blues.
In the morning, gonna get my things together, packing up and I'm leaving this place. Well, I don't believe you'll cry, there'll be a smile upon your face. I didn't think how much you'd hurt me. Yeah, there's something that I laugh about when hanging the good times, baby, and let the bad times out. All right. That old sign, it keeps on shining. Yeah, but someday it won't shine for you. And in the morning I'll be leaving, and I'll leave your mother too. A 1, 2, 3, 4.
We have our work cut out, really playing playing the Tull repertoire plus a few other odds and sods. I mean, we do pay some homage to other composers and musicians. I mean, on stage currently we're playing Leonard Bernstein's America from West Side Story, but based on Keith Emerson's arrangement with the Nice back in 1968, when they, like us, were a resident band at the Marquee Club, and the material from some classical composers, and lots of things slip into our shows that are not necessarily homegrown or particularly typical of my songwriting or music writing. But you can only have so much of everything. We have to, in the space of 2 hours, get through 40 years worth of music, and it's quite a tall order to be representative of all the stuff that we've done. It's so much about what you leave out rather than what you put in, and it's always a tricky choice. Indeed, as we've been speaking, take-home an email from our drummer, Don Perry, saying, what are we going to be playing in America? I need to start working on the set list. And, and I'm reminded of the fact that I have to sit down and go through not only what we played in Atlanta last time we were there, but perhaps the last 3 or 4 times we were there, and make sure that we don't just inadvertently replicate a set list from 2 or 3 years ago, because we always try and make sure that we play some of the more obvious pieces, and we play a good old mixture of things that are not so obvious, and plus some things that hopefully our audiences haven't heard us play before. So,
but with such a huge repertoire, I mean, is it really likely? And at the same time, how do you decide, and can you decide that far ahead?
Well, we have to decide that far ahead in some cases because of the equipment that we have to take, and even in the next couple of weeks, someone has to fly out to the USA to go through the warehouse to check what equipment is currently in store, what we need to rent in, what we already own that's sitting there, and we need to plan for what we're taking out from this end, and that involves thinking way ahead about flight cases and particular instruments that have to be either serviced or prepared for that particular tour. So yeah, I mean, it's only a few weeks before we go to America for the first tour, because we have 2 tours this year. One starts at the end of September, and so yeah, absolutely, we need to be thinking about set lists certainly a good few weeks before. Not just it's not just a wish list; it's a practical list of songs that have to be wed to particular pieces of equipment and instruments that we have to take if we're going to play a certain piece of music. So we have to figure out those things sometimes quite a way in advance, and indeed we're at that little point when I have just 2 days off between shows in Europe that I'm really have to, amongst other things, sit down and make a pretty good stab at a set list for the US tours this year.
Well, I think our audience are getting a different side of things that they would normally hear. They don't realize perhaps sometimes just how much you would have to do to address, like, equipment necessary, looking at a set list, what's going to be needed, what's existing, what needs to be rented, will it fit in that platform, in that particular auditorium, etc. It gets technical, and I always had the impression that you pretty much manage everything internally, and that's a lot of work. Has there ever been anything, really obscure, unscripted, that just happened that you recall that was just, out of the ordinary? Maybe?
Well, the most unscripted thing really was a 45-minute performance with Hari Prasad Chaurasia, the great Indian traditional classical flautist, who plays the music of northern India on a bamboo flute, and is probably the world's greatest exponent of the Indian bamboo flute. And he was a guest on some shows that we did in Dubai and in India a couple of years ago, and we played together in doing an Indian raga, which was based on some themes that we had to learn, and were quite, well, I wouldn't say they were particularly difficult to play in terms of notation. They were quite difficult on Western instruments, just because of the physical nature of the instruments, and they were played sometimes at lightning speed, so you had to be quite nimble-fingered. But that, I guess, 90% of what we were playing was improvisation, and that was that. We did, I think, 3 or 4 concerts together, and by the last show that we did, I mean, it was really quite vibrant. Everybody was more confident about what they were playing and more at ease with the nature of playing, rather spiritual Indian music, but with the addition of some electric instruments and with the addition of Western thinking. So it was quite invigorating, but very much a surprise, because you didn't really know what you were going to play until you played it, and then you would be listening very carefully what other people were playing, particularly the Indian musicians, in order that you could try to find your way into that mindset. And it's not impossible for Western musicians, but I think rather like playing the blues, you can go so far, and then you have to be honest and put your hand up and say, well, this is as far as I can take it without just being a bad imitator. And you're at your best when you manage to retain your own cultural dignity and fit in to that form of music without sort of selling out and trying to copy it. You know, you have to kind of keep a little bit of your own personality and identity in there as well, and not start getting into that kind of imitation thing, which is something that's always bothered me about a lot of British artists who sing in ridiculous fake American accents. And I mean, we have a couple of them at the moment, Joss Stone and Amy Winehouse, for example, who do what they do perfectly well, but it's just fakery. It's just they're imitators. They're just folks who, from childhood, have learned to copy American artists, and they do it very well. But it's just a copy, and they're not the real thing.
I often wonder, you know, I have to explain to people when they say, well, we didn't know that artist was British. I said, because you didn't speak to them or didn't hear them talking, because singing, you wouldn't know. I mean, even Rod Stewart in the last 10 years has developed this amazing American accent in song. But it's also selections of words that deliver that kind of feeling anyway, Americanisms.
It is, and it's something that is just taken for granted, and not many people ever, you know, utter a cheep about it. But it does kind of bother me a little bit. Actually, more than a little bit, it bothers me a lot that so few British artists are able to keep their own identity. They do, and it's particularly evident actually in Europe, where non-native English speakers singing in English do so in American accents, and they believe that by doing that they're going to be more acceptable in the UK and the USA. Whereas I point out to them, you know, the chances are you won't be, because you will be seen to be copiers and imitators. You'd actually be better off retaining a little bit of your own natural voice, your own natural accent. Nothing wrong with singing in English, but with a pronounced German accent, or, you know, there's nothing wrong or embarrassing about that. It's much more interesting to me and to the Americans to hear someone who you can put your finger on and say, oh, they sound like they're from France or Italy or whatever. You know, I'd much rather hear someone singing heavily accented. It's much more fun than a super cool, authentic delivery of a, you know, some deep Southern or New York or New England or whatever accent that's just a complete fake. But it's hard to persuade people that they can retain their own identity. They do all too easily believe that they've got to sound American in order to be accepted and successful. In fact, in your own fair city, my pal at CNN, Relitsa Vasilova, who's from Bulgaria, and from whom I've just opened an email, because I'm playing in Bulgaria in a couple of days' time with an orchestra there, and trying to blag some tickets for her friends. But you know, she's been in America, I guess, for 10, 11 years now as an anchor on CNN and on CNN International, and, you know, plays all around the world. And you know, she has a Bulgarian accent to her otherwise kind of American English. And I keep, every time I see her, I say, look, for goodness sake, you know, get a little thicker on the Bulgarian again, because, you know, you've been in America so long, it's beginning to sound almost American. But the thing that makes her stand out from the crowd is having this kind of rather thicker accent. And she's rather ashamed of it and embarrassed about it. But I keep saying, look, it's your biggest asset. You know, it's the thing that makes you different from all the others. That, you know, you have this mysterious hint of being from somewhere else, and it's, you know, you can't quite put your finger on it unless you know Bulgaria particularly well. You know, most people would assume that she was Russian, but the little hint of that Bulgarian accent is still there, and I really hope she doesn't lose it, because it's such a characterful thing. It's interesting, it's romantic, it's a kind of sexy thing to you know, set the imagination going with something like that. Whereas, you know, another heavily American presenter on CNN, I think, you know, the world can live with that. I'm all for having people from different places and different backgrounds, different cultures, religions, and linguistic origins, you know, showing their, you know, putting their cards on the table, showing us who they are. I think it's much more interesting.
To me, it adds great flavour to what you're hearing, as opposed to, you know, listening to the same deliverance, you know, day in, day out, different.
Peace and blessings. Please allow me to take a brief moment to introduce myself. My name is Aisha Hardiman, and I am the news station manager at WRFG 89.3 FM. I would like to usher in this new season by thanking you for your continued support. For 47 years, WRFG has stayed committed to bringing you progressive news, information, and music both locally and from around the world, and this will not change. As we enter a new year, we do so with confidence. 2020 challenged us in ways that we could have never imagined, but WRFG remained on the air, and we did that with your help. So I ask you, please take this time to visit WRFG.org to make your 2021 contribution today. I must send a special thank you to Joan Baptist for 20 amazing years of service. You will truly be missed. And as we move forward toward our goal of building an even stronger organization, we thank you for the many years you have given to this community. Much love, and I wish you all a Happy New Year.
So sad now that she's gone. I've been loving that woman too long. There's no place to go, cause my friends have all moved. Got nothing but sit in the sun. Got tired of crying. Guess I'll move on alone. And my heart has grown cold. Guess I'll just die before I grow old. Place is untidy, that's cause I ain't done my dirt. I've just grown tired of thinking. Got tired of crying. Guess I'll move on alone.
You were talking about the contribution from the Indians with the bamboo flute. Is there any other, world genre that you would like to go do something with? Maybe the Cuban Havana influence?
Definitely not. No. No, I'm really not big on kind of Caribbean and West Indian kind of music influences, or indeed on African music either. I don't.
Or Middle Eastern.
Well, Middle Eastern is okay. Once we get up into the northern part of Africa and into all of Arabia, then there's a lot of that music that I find very moving and appealing. I mean, I was just in Israel a couple of days ago, and some CDs that I got given there, were very interesting because they do. Although Israel is, if you like, is polarized opposite to Arab as you could imagine on the face of it, but musically they have a tremendous amount in common, and because of all the influences of Eastern European music that have found their way into Israel in more recent years, with a huge immigration of former USSR folk, then it is quite a melting pot of musical styles and types, and I find all of that very invigorating. If shortly, week after this, I'm heading up to Scandinavia, to Finland, and in Finland there is almost a sort of an in-house kind of folk music style, which is quite different to everything else. It's there's a whole group of fiddle players in a little village outside Helsinki that have kind of evolved this music that is quite unlike anything else, and tremendous vitality in Finnish contemporary folk music, which embodies elements of cultural and historical importance, but alongside some of the technology and some of the musical techniques of contemporary rock and jazz music. So some great Finnish bands and artists around. I mean, check out a band called MARTYN, who are exponents of Finnish contemporary folk music that you can't fail to be seduced by. The Fishwives on Helium, which is how I refer to the three girls in MARTYN. But they're great. They're a great band and great musicians in the group too.
It's always wonderful to discover new things like that, and the more you travel, the more you find, just simply by, the more you listen by walking past doorways and stepping in, maybe uninvited, but something off the beaten path. And
well, in my case, it's easier because people just give me CDs and say, "Check this out." So I'm not one for heading off into dark corridors or unlit side streets in search of my musical jollies. I'm straight back to a hotel to get into bed after a concert and leave it first thing the next morning. So I tend to soak up the atmosphere of a place probably only in the lunch hour and through the CDs and references that people give to me when I'm.
Hi, this is Dana Gillespie from London, England, to tell you about the second best way to wake up. Just tune in to UK Bob and his Good Morning Blues show and feel good for 4 hours on WRFG Atlanta.
There, I sort of take them away with me and sift through them later and listen to the music from where I've just been.
Well, is there going to be a 40th anniversary project that you have in mind? Something?
Well, there will be an album released next year, which is a studio album of music that some of which we've already recorded this year, but it'll be end of the year and into January, February before we get to finish it. So there will be a sort of a 40th anniversary Jethro Tull album release. In terms of touring, there'll be lots of places around the world that we will play. We have a couple of UK tours next year. In fact, the most number of dates in the UK that we played for, well, as far as I can remember, ever. But that's fitting because it is the 40th anniversary of Jethro Tull, and we did begin as a British band. So I think we're taking advantage of that next year, and there'll be a few dates in the USA and dates in various countries of Europe, but no enormous tours, just tend to be after the UK tours in March and April. There'll be relatively short outings to different parts of the planet, and we may go and say our farewells to Australia, New Zealand, and one or two other countries that we probably logistically won't get round to again. So it's not a farewell tour, but nonetheless you have to be aware that there are some places you're probably just not going to go back to, because at this point in our lives, or in my life, I have so many offers to go to so many places, the chances are that I won't, after I play in South Africa in November, I mean, it's very unlikely I'll visit that part of the world again in years to come, simply because it's not a place you'd go to more than every 10 years anyway. So yeah, there's a sense of accomplishment and a sense of time having passed, but I would like to think that for a few more years at least I get to go and visit some parts of the world that are not too difficult to get to and from, and where maybe I still get the opportunity to play in some towns and places I've never played in before, which appeals to me greatly. To try and do quite a few of those every year is to reach out to some audiences who've never seen me or Jethro Tull play, and it kind of gives me a bit of a kick to get the chance to still do that.
Well, I would think so, especially, looking at people to see what the reaction is going to be. And after the amazingly ambitious orchestral project, maybe just playing in a brand new place somewhere small that perhaps you haven't been to before, for people who aren't entirely sure what to expect, is perhaps something a little less complex, and you get more opportunity to reciprocate the pleasure side. You referred to the orchestral part of it earlier, and I was absolutely fascinated as to how you pull all that together, because you've got to identify with 30 or 40 musicians and steer them accordingly, and I thought it was wonderfully done and very expressive, but just seems a tremendous mountain to climb sometimes to try and make that conversion.
Well, it is, and sometimes it's easier than it is on other occasions. I had an easy run with a great American band that I got from the New England Conservatory in Boston, and so we had a bunch of young classical musicians just kind of reaching the end of their period of college work, and who they came out on the road, and they were all very competent players, but more importantly, they were all very energetic and enthusiastic about being on the road, and the tour bus and per diems and backstage catering and all of these exciting things that they never got to do before. And that was very good, because we had the same orchestra every night. We had a day's rehearsal at the beginning of the tour, and then they sailed through the next 3.5 weeks as, you know, the regular band, the regular orchestra with us every night. So that was very enjoyable, and you know, that they were young American kids with their lives ahead of them, and in one or two cases, sadly, already coming to the conclusion that their chances of remaining as professional musicians were pretty limited, and one or two of the folks had more or less decided after our tour that they were going to look for other forms of employment. That you know, not to say their years at college had been wasted, but I think the realization that the chances of getting good work in any meaningful orchestra was pretty limited in the USA, as it is everywhere, because of the logistics and the economies of orchestral works. It is getting much harder for young classical musicians to find gainful employment. I got to run. I've got another thing to do coming up, actually gone by, so I will make my apologies for being late. But great to talk to you, and we look forward to being in Atlanta in just a few months' time, and hopefully we will arrive without incident. Last time I flew into Atlanta, it was thunderstorms and terrible weather and cancelled flights, and we luckily it was a travel day before a show, but we didn't get into our hotel until 1:30 in the morning, after something like 18 hours of travel from waking up at the crack of dawn in the previous city. So,
well, you're playing in a Baptist church. I can assure you that the
waves
will be parted, the mood will be excellent, and everything will go perfectly. Ian, thank you so
Hi, this is Dana Gillespie from London, England, to tell you about the second best way to wake up. Just tune in to UK Bob and his Good Morning Blues show and feel good for 4 hours on WRFG Atlanta.
And so, to close out this chapter on Jethro Tull, 50 years of Aqualung, it seems perfectly apt that we spin forward 35 years when they gathered together to do Someday the Sun Won't Shine in a live acoustic format with Martyn Abrams as well as Martin Barr, all gathered together, and rather excellent harmonica and a little 30-second remaining piece I wanted to add from Ian Anderson. And living with the past, I guess we should say.
When we first started playing, where there would be 3, 5, 6 people in the audience, and we would play shows, and people would just kind of just look at us and go, just ignore us. And, we'd pack up and go home, back to our parents in some cases, my chilly bedsitter in Luton in my case, and it was it was actually damn depressing, really. You thought, is this it? Is this being a professional musician? It was tough.
Get my things together, packing up, and I'm leaving this place. I don't believe you're crying at me, a smile upon your face. I didn't think how much you'd hurt me. Yeah, there's something that'll laugh laugh about. Bringing the good times, baby, and laugh the bad times out. Shine to you, and in the morning I'll be leaving, and I'll leave your mother too.
Right then, back to new blues or obscure unheard bits, and a little bit about next week's guest, the fabulous Mr. Tom Rush, which will be February the 4th.
Is nothing but the devil. Knows my babies is nothing but the devil. Knows my babies. Man, I laid down last night, trying to take my rest. You know, I laid down last night. I was trying to take my rest, but my mind started rambling like the wild geese in the my mind started rambling like the wild geese in the my mind started rambling like the wild geese in the way. Just to have it on her, so much evil just to have it on her, so much evil just to have it on her. And I know a woman I love stole her from my best friend. No, woman I love stole her from my best friend. But I know he'll get lucky, steal her back. I know he'll get lucky, try to steal her back. I know he'll get lucky, steal her back. away with soda blame. Strong will with a short tongue, and your heart is where away. I'm a hard-headed woman, I can't be tamed. I'm a hard-headed woman, a lost soul to blame. I know I'll be sorry someday for my ways I can't change. I know my baby loves me, I know he'll never stay. Black tears are gonna fall through the thunder on my baby. He ain't never done me wrong, but what's it matter now? He's a million miles away, wouldn't have stayed anyhow. I could have tried a little harder, but what good would it do? I'm a hard-headed woman, and now I'm lonely too. I'm a hard-headed woman. I'm a hard-headed woman, a stubborn, hard-headed woman, but a lonely, hard-headed woman. This hard-headed woman is gonna be sorry someday.
Hi, I'm Joan Baptist, WFG's station manager, and it's time to pass the torch. And I want to thank all of our listeners for making my time at WFG so fulfilling. The pandemic won't let us have a big retirement party, so I just want you to picture me giving you a big air hug. WFG has been a bright spot in my heart for 20 years, and I hope it is a bright spot in your heart. So please go to our website and make a donation to WRFG at WRFG.org. The website has all these different and wonderful ways that you can make a donation. Thank you all for being there for WRFG. Thank you all for being there for me. Much love to everyone.
Yes,
Be
indeed.
well.
Dear Joni, 16 of my 20 years on the air, you've been around to harass me, poke me, tell me about my awful handwriting, which is when I tell you, hey, I was put on the planet to speak, not write. So anyway, I hope you do actually get to walk away. It's still 4 weeks after you quit and you're still here handing over. So please get out of the building and enjoy the time off with your new calendar. Yes. Let me tell you what we were playing. We're back to the last two tracks, actually. Or was it three? No, it's three. Okay, that's a rare John Martyn track called I'd Rather Be the Devil. It was live, amazing guitar player. Yes, he's a mumbly singer, but he's known for it, and it kind of adds to the mood. That was from the Old Grey Whistle Test live, a wonderful, wonderful British TV show that would display brand new groovy stuff that no one had heard about. That was 1973. Followed by the Head Honchos, father and son band from the Midwest, doing a rock and roll piece. And what was it called? I forget. I don't know. SKYLAR Rogers was the last thing we had there. A very rocky thing called Hard-Headed Woman from a brand new album called Fire Breather. Let me tell you what you're going to hear next. A quick taste of next week's guest, the fabulous Mr. Tom Rush. And if you don't know, look him up. You'll be absolutely staggered what he's been doing for such a long time. He is American's singer-songwriter troubadour that began it all. So his fans, not heroes, people that follow him are the James Taylors of this world. And he's still doing it. and he plays to huge audiences all over the world. And he's a very funny guy too, but he's written a lot of great stuff. He was covering people like Joni Mitchell before anybody knew who they were, which I think is pretty cool. They, in turn, covered him when he got big. So very, very interesting guy. Next week, February the 4th, Mr. Tom Rush. So here's a song of his from 1966 and has nothing to do with canned heat.
Said goodbye to Boston town, Mass Turnpike to Route 15. You take me on down to the New York scene. Humming of the ties, it sure is pretty. Think about the women in New York City on the road again. Now I can't stop more than just a few minutes, baby, make love to you. Hey, 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 on the road again. You take the Holland Tunnel to the Jersey Pike. You roll through Philly in the middle of the night. I'm on the road again. I went downtown D.C. running all around town trying to find a little lady hit me when I'm down. Nobody answers, ain't anybody home. Gotta grab me a cab, get the Baltimore. She got great long hair, big old smile, great long legs that drive me wild. And hey, I'm on the road again. Now I can't stop more than just a few minutes, baby, tell you about my love for you. Hey, 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 I'm on the road again. Now I hate to go, I just can't stay. Gotta make it to Atlanta by the break of day. And hey, on the road again. Hey, 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 on the road again. Georgia Patrol, hot on my trail, hit the Florida line, moving special air mail. The Sunshine State, it sure looks sweet. To put the Georgia Patrol back upon the beat. Put her in overdrive, rolling down a turnpike, listen to the whistling of the wind, feeling just like, hey, I'm on the road again. Now I can't stop more than just a few minutes, baby, make love to you. Hey, 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 I'm on the road again. Miami women, they sure are jive. They get their men if it's dead or alive. And hey, I'm on the road again. Now it's too many places, too many towns, too many faces gonna drag me down. Believe I leave Chicago, I believe I'll roll back down to Boston and rest my soul. I'm on a 3-time ticket, moving way too fast. Gotta pull in the plaza stop and even get gas. And then hey, I'm on the road again. Now I won't be stopping more than just a few minutes, baby, baby, make love to you. Hey, 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 I'm on the road again. Got a woman that I'm loving, I believe I'll leave her, 'cause I've never been to Denver or the West Coast either. And hey,
Tom Rush, my terrific guest next week, February the 4th. He's still on the road, and he still sounds like he has a 40-year-old voice. He'll be 80 next month. Amazing guy. Really, really good person to chat to about life and life on the road and traveling. He's writing a book as well, which I think is going to be the title of that song. I just realized that. Karma. Anyway, going to close out with this next chap, Mr. Dave Thomas. And he also has been kicking around a while. He's early 70s. Because I'm going to tail off, I'll tell you what he's playing. He's going to play a James Cotton song, One More Mile, which has Hammond in it. It's kind of mid-pace thing. And then slow down with a slow acoustic called There's a Train, both of which from a brand new release called One More Mile. He used to play in the British rocky bluesy psych band called Blonde on Blonde, named after you-know-who. But he's got together with Dave Greenslade and doing a lot of new stuff somewhere in deepest, darkest Wales. So have a look out for Dave Thomas Another super interesting guy. And stay out of trouble, wear your mask, wash your hands, behave, get rid of this stupid virus, okay? Toodles.
about you no more.
Like a jazz refrain, the midnight train is calling. Hey, you best go soon, the late night moon is falling. Let the night birds whisper to themselves. This train pulls out at 12. High tide's breaking on the shore. The church bell tolls. There's a train that leaves tonight. A mile nothing he'd make me wanna stay. There's a train that leaves tonight. I might just ride away. I just can't hope to tell you about the stillness and the quiet. The frozen fields so lonely, the train sounds in the night, the sounds of nothing moving, the night snow all aglow. I simply gotta leave you. My heart cries out to go. There's a train that leaves tonight. I might just ride on. There's nothing here make me wanna stay. There's a train that leaves tonight. I might just ride away.